What happens when an uneducated minor posts NSFW artwork of their characters online for anyone to see and puts it behind a paywall that only adults really can get behind and benefit from? Well, today we're going to be covering the Sofia Samara situation, the recent allegations of tracing, racism, and NSFW, and the whole heap of evidence against Sofia. However, at the exact same time, I'm going to go into this video from a neutral, unbiased perspective because I believe that Sofia is someone that's a child that really needs to be educated on this situation, and although there is criticism to be had with Sofia, I feel like the original thread, comes across in a very biased way by default, as it seems like they already had a predisposed hatred or distaste for Sofia at the start, but at the exact same time, I want to use this video to exemplify how dangerous it can be for minors in the art community that make pornographic or NSFW related artwork of characters in a community that's mainly tailored towards adults, producing content that's normally something that only adults are going to have interest in. By making such content, it immediately becomes a problem and puts you in harm's way, and this video is going to explain why, while also covering the recent allegations and explaining my opinion on the situation. So, with that being said, I'd like to make a quick disclaimer and a trigger warning at the start. This video is an attempt to educate people on the situation. This video is not an attack, harassment, call-out, or anything else. This video is only for the purpose of entertaining and educating. Also, I do not support either side of the argument. I'm coming in this video from a completely neutral perspective. And finally, trigger warnings for NSFW mentions, predatory behavior mentions, and racism. With that being said, roll the intro. But just quickly before we dive right into it, I'd like to quickly mention the fact that I'm a coffee channel, which means that I'm like a tea channel, but I actually do my research and make videos on things that matter. And also, if you'd like to become a coffee enjoyer too, you can become a channel member and you get all of these icons. Finally, you can subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 50,000 subs by the end of the year, and you can check out my other social media or other donation methods down below. With that being said, let's just jump right into it. Now, before I dig deep into all of the more serious allegations against Sofia and the more serious situation as a whole, I'd like to start this video by focusing on the criticism that I do have for Sofia, as I think it's important to get this out of the way at the start. So, on tracing, I do definitely believe that Sofia has traced a lot of their artwork. The original point was highlighted the fact that Sofia's art had improved very drastically over such a short time, which, to be fair, I do think that could be accounted to the fact that Sofia changed styles and focused on a more realistic style, and it was clear before then that they did still have prowess in art. However, I do feel like it is a fair point to mention. And then also, it was highlighted that basically without a doubt Sofia has used photos and used them and traced them. If you look at a lot of these lineups on the right here, you'll notice how all of them almost perfectly line up with the original photoed image. However, I don't believe that Sofia has been hiding this. If you pay attention to a lot of Sofia's posts, like their YouTube videos, they show the image they're supposed to be tracing on screen. They rotate it to face the same way as the artwork, and I believe that they make it very obvious that it is the exact image they're using. If you look at a lot of their YouTube videos, you can see quite clearly that they've put it next to the image, they aren't hiding it in any way, and they've never led people into believing that they hadn't done that. And you'll also notice that in a lot of their posts on Instagram, they actually credit the photographer or the model for the picture. Now, I don't believe that that justifies the fact that they said they were referencing, because this isn't referencing. If you look at the lineup, this is way more than referencing, this is quite clearly traced. I think that it is quite easy to say that Sofia took inspiration from these people's images, decided to use them as images to use as a base or to trace, took the posing and facial features, and then used that as their piece to try and change it into something more art-focused. And while I wouldn't have an issue with that if they acknowledged it and said they were tracing, I do feel like it's disingenuous the way they frame it as referencing. And also, I'm guessing that they didn't get consent from the original photography people. Now, I wouldn't have as much of an issue with this whole situation if they got the consent of the models or photographers that they were using for these art pieces. However, it's hard to tell if they actually did, though giving them the benefit of the doubt, the fact they credited those people makes me think it's plausible that they checked with the original photographers. However, at the same time, it's almost impossible to know without any of the photographers coming out and speaking about this, and at this current moment, that still wouldn't change the fact that these pieces are traced, which is a problem if they market it as just referencing. However, I feel like this could also be attributed to a miswording, but at the exact same time, the fact that they haven't clarified upon it and have continued to make excuses for this whole time, it does seem like they are misleading their audience into believing that they're doing a lot more of the work themselves. Now, I noticed in Daft Pina's video that they mentioned the fact that they believed that this could have just been up to the image they were using and less about their actual talent, but given the fact that they actually link their oil brush pack, and seeing as they actually do show their sketch work, I don't think that it's likely that we can attribute all of this to just the photo that they're using or something. I do believe that there is a lot to be said here about them actually having a talent, clearly having an art talent. However, they are using other people's models, and they are actively tracing those pieces of work and sometimes selling this traced work through Patreon and other platforms, which shouldn't be something that they consider doing and shouldn't be something that they're allowed to do without being criticized for it, and they should be upfront with their audience about this, and they should have the consent of the models before doing this. Now, jumping right into the more serious claims, they claim here that the artist actually only uses people of color as a cash grab and ignore people when they call them out for being exploitative towards people of color. Now, this is an over-dramatization of what actually happened and entirely exaggerates the proof they actually have. So I'm going to touch on the actual proof and highlight how I feel that their proof doesn't actually highlight what they're trying to say. Now, their first proof is the fact that they only see people of color as a cash grab, and that's highlighted by Sofia saying, "I cannot think of any other explanation that they are doing people of color because they want to represent. I do people of color because paying customers ask for it, and naturally I get more clout because I have bigger numbers, so they got jealous and now they just want to put me down." Now, this is quite definitely an egotistical comment to make. However, at the exact same time, this seems like an out of context quote from some discussion they were having about someone else, and considering we don't know the context, and furthermore, at no point there do they claim that they use people of color as a cash grab, but more are saying that they do it when people commission them, which is more of them trying to say, which they clarified in the future, that they don't draw people of color because they aren't a person of color and they feel they may misrepresent them, which I feel like is a fair reasoning if that's your reasoning behind it. You aren't forced to draw people of color, and if you're only going to do them for commissions because you don't believe you represent them well, that is your own choice, though I'd say don't draw them at all if you feel you can't draw a person of color well. They also show another screenshot of Sofia saying, "It's just that this person is this close to name dropping me and accusing me of false things, so I must keep a very close eye on them, all because of spite that my people of color get more clout." Now, that is just a highlight of Sofia being presumptuous of what the other person's motives are. Again, we don't know the context, but given the fact that they're claiming that it's because this other person is jealous of their following, I don't feel like, although it's egotistical, they may be entirely in the wrong. In the next point, they show DMs on Twitter to Sofia where someone else said that people of color aren't bonuses. Now, this is a clear misinterpretation of what Sofia was trying to say. By bonus, Sofia means that this is an alternate version of the original post, by saying that they changed something to make it different than the original piece they were showing, which isn't them saying that people of color are a bonus, but more just them saying that they did an alternate version of the art piece. And then this anonymous commenter says that they colored the skin color incorrectly, which is on them to say, and I believe it's a fair criticism of Sofia, and it comes across more like they're just teaching Sofia the best thing to do with their art in the future, which doesn't seem like a bad thing. The problem is that Sofia responded to that by blocking the person that DM'd them that, according to this Twitter thread, which isn't a good decision to make. You shouldn't block someone for providing you valid criticism or giving you advice on your artwork without explaining to them. They in no way in those DMs were harassing Sofia or blasting them or anything like that. They were more giving them advice and explaining to them that people of color aren't bonus artwork, which is something that Sofia could have clarified on and they would have understood. Now, this Twitter thread does raise a fair point of Sofia being quite insensitive to people from other countries though. Sofia made a tweet saying, "No, I won't fucking translate your replies, just type it in English," and then keyboard spammed.
I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about brands, but me running around burning down a rainbow flag doesn't feel too good.
Now, if you ask me, that's incredibly insensitive because obviously Sofia is an art account that doesn't have an audience that would be generalized to one language because art content is universal and isn't a language. Now, Sofia posting something like this, expecting everyone, even people that don't speak English, to reply in English for the convenience of Sofia is incredibly disrespectful. Now, I'd understand this more if you're in a Discord server that was focused around English discussion or topics from like YouTube content that is only in English. I'd get it more because the content would center or focus around that language or those communities. Now, this response should never be expected in any community. You shouldn't blast someone or disrespect them or force them to use English because it's more convenient for you, especially on a platform like Twitter that has a literal button that just translates it. It seems incredibly disrespectful to people of different languages, different heritage, different culture, and it seems like Sofia is just being incredibly disrespectful and insensitive here. Now, here is where I notice this Twitter thread starts to drop the ball. Now, I'm only going to comment on this as a gender fluid and pansexual person because I believe that it's fair and within my right to discuss this. The author of this Twitter thread says that Sofia clearly doesn't understand or respect the LGBTQ and decides to monetize off of another minority being gay, with safe for work and non-safe for work posts, and continues to profit off them on Patreon. Now, their proof of this is this first screenshot, where Sofia says that they don't want to draw trans people because they don't know what trans people look like IRL, and they don't really understand how that sort of thing would work. I don't see that as an issue. If you don't know what a trans person would look like or what chest scars would look like because you've never seen them in real life, that doesn't mean that you're a bad person, that doesn't mean that you don't respect the LGBTQ, and that doesn't mean that you're discriminating in any way against any minority. In contrast to this, I believe it's highly plausible that Sofia has seen gay couples in real life, and I believe that if they feel more comfortable drawing gay couples, I see no issue with them doing that as long as they're not representing them in harmful ways or stereotyping them in disrespectful ways. My issue would be if Sofia, while uneducated on trans people, decided to do artwork focusing around trans people. It's not their fault if they don't want to draw trans people. It's not discriminatory to not draw trans people, and it means more that they respect that community because they aren't drawing it just to monetize on it, whether they feel comfortable drawing it or not. This more stands as a testament that Sofia feels less comfortable drawing trans people because they don't know what a trans person would look like in that kind of way, so they don't want to. I feel like the author of this Twitter thread really shouldn't have commented on this if they were going to make such an uneducated and outlandish take, in my opinion, and that's where I notice a very clear decline in the quality of this Twitter thread as a whole. This Twitter user then highlights the fact that Sofia said that you cannot keep minors away from suggestive or NSFW content, and it's simply impossible even if there were hundreds of mods. Now, I feel like when the Twitter thread says that this person doesn't care if minors are in adult spaces, they've completely misconstrued what Sofia was trying to say here. What Sofia seemingly was trying to say is that it's almost impossible to keep that type of content away from minors even if there's hundreds of mods, which I do see to be a fair point. I mean, without searching for it, I've seen so much porn on my Twitter timeline, it's unbelievable, and I've had my Discord server raided multiple times where they've spammed porn and other things. I feel like it is almost a certainty that most minors, if not all of them, have at some point while being underage seen pornography without wanting to, or have had it forced upon them in some sort of way. I feel like what Sofia was trying to say here has been taken out of context, and they were trying to say that it's simply impossible to keep that content away from minors, and not that they don't care because minors would see this content anyway. Though I do feel like Sofia should implement better moderation on their server, which I believe they have tried to do, by now verifying members before they can access the NSFW chats, which I believe is a better way of approaching this situation. However, I do feel like minors as a whole shouldn't have NSFW chats on their Discord servers. But now, let's talk about the minor claim against Sofia and how this becomes a huge problem very quickly. Minors drawing NSFW and selling it to adults. Let's get to that right now. Now, Sofia's age has been something they've lied about on multiple different occasions or have simply hidden from people, either not showing it on their account or lying about it, with some occasions with them hiding their age and stating that they're 21 years of age, which simply isn't true. Now, more recently, Sofia did a Patreon post where they said they would no longer be making NSFW artwork because they are 17 and they found out recently that it was wrong of a 17-year-old to draw NSFW. Now, personally, I feel like this is a lie, and I believe that they knew that it was wrong for a minor to draw NSFW, and that's why they lied about their age initially. However, I do feel like them lying about their age also puts them in a state of danger because they were putting themselves in situations where they could have been taken advantage of by adults and manipulated because they were lying about their age. Now, more in the main point that's actually happening with this video, you'll notice the fact that Sofia was a minor who was drawing porn artwork for their audience and selling it. This is where it becomes a problem because they're garnering an audience that is focused on NSFW content, mainly an audience of adults, that is then getting that content from Sofia and is then discussing sexual topics with Sofia, who was a minor who was 17, and is also constantly persuading Sofia or stating that they should make more NSFW artwork, which has led to Sofia apparently continuing to make this artwork to this day, which is an incredible problem because, again, Sofia is a minor. You're putting yourself in a state of danger because you're garnering an audience that is constantly focused around that content, constantly enables you doing it, and constantly spurs you to make more by telling you that you should. This is a situation that's very problematic because it could very easily mean that Sofia could be taken advantage of by these people, and also is something Sofia shouldn't be doing in general. With their name, their location, and more being public, this puts themselves in a state of danger because they're constantly in a position where they could be preyed on by adults thinking it is okay to discuss these things with minors, or could think it's acceptable to send minors this content because of it, or could think that it's acceptable to send Sofia sexual advances because Sofia is making this content, which makes them believe that Sofia is overage. Now, Sofia claimed they wouldn't make this content anymore, and then they've continued, which makes this even more of a problem, because if Sofia has continued to make this content as it's been claimed, that means that Sofia is continuing to enable this audience and is constantly allowing more people to get in this audience and do this type of behavior with them. and is now continuing to promote this danger to their audience and putting themselves at harm's way, constantly selling these items despite the fact that they already know the inherent risk behind it. Minors shouldn't be involved in this content, posting it, or involved in communities focused around NSFW, and that should be common sense. Now, with that being said, I think this video has covered everything I want to. However, if you think there's more information I should cover, please do send it to me, and I'll be sure to make a follow-up where I cover that information too. With that being said, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I hope this video has spread more light on the situation, has brought awareness to an issue I've noticed in the art community, and has informed you on the problems with minors being involved in these communities, while simultaneously explaining to people like Sophie why this type of behavior puts themselves at risk, and why they shouldn't do it, while criticizing them in hopes that they learn and take my advice for the future if they see this video. With that being said, hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I make these videos every single day. I post at 6 PM GMT, 1 PM EST, and I'm aiming for 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, which is only possible with your support. With that being said, I'd appreciate if you could also check out my other social media like my Twitter, Discord, and Instagram, all linked down below, and you can also donate through Patreon or Ko-fi if you'd like to support me financially, or finally, if you'd like to become a coffee drinker just like me, you can check out my join button, and you can get one of the 3 badges to support me financially. That'd be highly appreciated. Thank you for watching these videos, thank you for giving me your time out of your day, and with that being said, I'll see you next time. Peace.
Says she wanna rock with it like me. I'm a stylish guy. Spend a little guap with it like me. We can catch a fly. Says she wanna rock with it like me.